So after some of my last videos where I explained about having to bring the part of you that you rejected back into yourself in order to make you whole again, there have been some questions like, why would I want it back if I pushed it out to begin with? And how can I get it back if it's so unacceptable to society? These are valid questions, and they made me realize that these questions are coming from people who have severe guilt or shame about something or about some part of themselves that they really can't even fathom letting in as part of their identity. That's why they pushed it out to begin with. I think it's important to differentiate between guilt and shame for this topic. Guilt is when you've hurt others, intentionally or unintentionally. Shame is when there's a part of yourself that you believe is so terrible that you don't want anybody to see it. It can lead you to something that hurts others, which then becomes guilt and shame all tangled up together. Let's look at guilt first. Imagine your child did that thing that you feel so guilty about. Would you, as a conscious parent, I'm not talking about any random unconscious parent here, as a conscious parent, would you hate or reject or banish that child? Or would you consider that he didn't know any better, or that accidents happen, or that he might have been driven by his own pain, or his own demons, or his own needs to feel or not feel something? Wouldn't you help him figure out his motives? Or if it was unintentional, help him understand that it was out of his control? It's easy to say that we could have done something different in retrospect after the fact. But in reality, we do the best with the tools that we have. By tools, I mean your circumstances, your emotional states, your upbringing, your mental capacity, your unprocessed feelings, your beliefs about the world, your belief about yourself and others, your trauma responses, all those things. Those are the tools that you have to work with. Only after the experience, you have the reference of what happened, to know not to make those choices again. But before it did, you didn't know. How could you? You hadn't experienced it yet. So guilt is actually a very strange emotion where we hold ourselves responsible for something we didn't know. But you didn't know that you were supposed to know, else you would have known to know. And you would have done it differently, right? So yes, your actions might have resulted in something terrible happening. But how do you know it wasn't part of the plan? The plan for you to become whatever you needed to be, or for someone else to become whatever they needed to be. We're all just here having our own human experience. And who are we to judge anything? You don't know what you or another soul came here for. You could have contracted all this with each other before you even came here. All this pain, suffering, guilt, fear, shame, these are all just earth emotions. After we die, there's none of that. It's all just part of your body's programming, your spacesuit, so that you can function here on Earth. Outside of Earth, there's no judgment. That's a whole man-made concept to scare people into following certain rules to keep society safe. The only hell is the hell you create for yourself by living in the torment of guilt and shame. I realize this is a difficult concept for some to grasp. But what if you just need to realize that you are a human being having a human experience? I'm not talking about giving yourself license to go around doing whatever you want. If you're a conscious person interested in healing, you wouldn't want to harm anyone. And if you have some kind of strange urges to hurt people, you have the access to go and find the wound inside of yourself and the belief about yourself that brings these evil thoughts about. And this brings us to the shame part. Any bad urges that you might get that you feel the need to control are just unhealed wounds that want to be seen. So instead of rejecting them off the bat like you've always been doing, why don't you just start getting curious about them? Bad urges and normal urges are all the same when it comes to parts of you that want to be seen. The urge to drink, the urge to use drugs, the urge to watch porn, the urge to eat, even the urge to check your phone for no reason at all. They're all the same. You just pick the one that you've learned gives you instant distraction from that feeling coming up inside you that you want to push down. Funny how these distractions to avoid feeling shame and guilt also cause guilt and shame. We feel guilty for overeating or drinking, or whatever we use to cope. It's like drinking medication for a headache that gives you a headache. But that's what we do. Crazy. So when you feel that urge coming up, that feeling bubbling up inside of you, look for the pattern. What happens just before you get the urge every single time? Are you having thoughts about the past or about the future? Are you thinking about something that might go wrong? Or are you thinking about something that already went wrong? Something already happened? Did something happen that made you feel weak or powerless or betrayed or used or vulnerable? What happened just before this urge came up? If you can't identify, just try to stay with the feeling. Don't try to push it away. Stay with it. Endure it for a bit. Feel it. Feel how old you feel. That might help identify the first time you felt that way. When you can describe the feeling, what it feels like. Panic. Someone's sitting on my chest. Like my head is going to explode. Like my throat is closing up. Ask it why. Why do I feel like my head is going to explode? And then wait for the answer to come up. Don't think it, wait for it. Because I feel under pressure. Why do you feel under pressure? Because I have so many responsibilities. Okay? Why do I have so many responsibilities? Because I never let anybody help me. Okay, so why don't I let anybody help me? Because I can't trust people. Why can't I trust people? Because people hurt me. What does it mean when people hurt me? It means I'm vulnerable. Epiphany. You have that amazing realization. So when you realize all these things you do, work your way back up the Y chain. Not trusting people, taking on too much, feeling overwhelmed, suffering from anxiety, and having the urge to eat or use drugs or whatever your preference is. It's just because you've made it unacceptable to feel vulnerable. Because in the past it got you hurt. So now you avoid it at all costs altogether and do everything you can to be the opposite. You do everything to be strong, to be independent, to be self-sufficient, just so that you don't feel vulnerable. That was a protective mechanism you designed to survive that time when you needed it. But now it's causing you more harm than good. It's always going to keep you weary. Once bitten, twice shy. That's a good thing. But now you can allow vulnerability back in to make you whole again. Allow yourself to feel it. Sit with the inner child that felt vulnerable and got banished. Tell him how you love him and how you're there for him as the adult you. The sense of freedom and release will be absolutely overwhelming. Allow the tears to wash over your face. If there's no tears, you're not doing it right. Release this resistance you've been holding onto for so long. You're allowed to feel vulnerable now because you're an adult and you can protect yourself with healthy boundaries instead of just avoiding and cutting off vulnerability altogether. There's enormous power in vulnerability. It's the very thing that makes us authentic and allows true connection between human beings. And you've never experienced that in a healthy way. You've only experienced the danger of it. That's why you're scared of it. If the answer you come to in your investigation is not I'm vulnerable, but rather something that you still can't fathom to embrace, like maybe I'm stupid or I'm a failure, you still might find it hard to love that version of yourself. Here it's really important to feel what age you were. Now think about yourself as an adult, blaming, kicking, rejecting this little kid feeling like a failure or feeling stupid because who they've made you. Someone who's forever stupid and a failure. Consider what an enormous burden that is for a little kid to carry. Would you be treating any little kid that age that way if they felt stupid or like a failure? Even if they were stupid in the moment or battled to get something right? Probably not, right? But here you are beating on yourself as a little kid forever. If you still can't get yourself to love them, at least stop beating them. At least be an older sibling for them. Sit with them and tell them that you're there for them even though they feel this way. You are now the adult here. You're not the kid anymore. So far in your life, you haven't let that kid grow up. Your identity has stayed with that kid. It's now time to separate yourself and be there for them and move on to the new you that you want to be. So basically, to do this, you follow the trail of whys as deep as you can. And then when you see you can't go any deeper, ask, what does that mean? In the deepness of it, you'll probably find a little kid that feels unloved or unseen or unworthy or rejected or powerless or vulnerable or something like that. And he thinks that this thing he gets from the urge, food, porn, drugs, alcohol, whatever distraction he's chosen, makes him feel better, more powerful, more significant, more attractive, more loved. But all he actually wants is to be loved, accepted, and seen by you as the adult version of himself. He wants you to be the parent that he needed back then. The one that tried to understand instead of rejecting, punishing, and banishing. So let's look at that first question again. Why will I let it back if I pushed it out to begin with? You accepting that part of yourself is not letting it become who you are or letting it become your identity again. Up to now, you've been that kid, trying not to be him. So to you, it might seem like accepting him and loving him goes against what you've been trying to do. No, your older self, who you are now, just needs to love the younger version of yourself, even though they were rejected or hated or banished for whatever they did. That part of yourself needs to be forgiven by you, not by anyone else. The world will always be your mirror, so you'll never get validation or worthiness or approval from the world until you give it to yourself. Just stop beating that little kid and see their pain. You are the adult now. So the second question, how can I let it back if it's so unacceptable to society? It's not the urge that you're making okay. It's what's causing the urge. The urge is just the false medicine. It's the original hurt that you are making okay. By loving, accepting, and seeing that rejected kid, you're not allowing him to go wild in society. He won't want to anymore if you love and accept him, because he no longer needs to run havoc to get attention and to get you to see him and to get his wounds attended to. So he doesn't need to bang down doors anymore. The version of him you're accepting and loving and seeing is the vulnerable, hurt version. His behavior, which is what you banished him for in the first place, was just the result of his rejection. So loving him takes the rejection away and also the destructive behavior. The more you tried to banish and reject him, the worse his behavior got, and the louder he was screaming. Now he has no need to do that anymore because you've loved him again. So I really hope that makes sense, but if you still need help with this, you're more than welcome to book a private session with me and we can work through it together. My contact details are in the video description.